All right, so we're back on the second part of the video. And for those of you with the podcast, this is still going on. You might have heard an ad or something there, whatever. Um, but yeah, so let's talk about me. Let's talk about what I'm going through right now. My thought process. My dad died. It's still very surreal. It's not something that gets better. Um, I've learned people have told me right when it happened, people told me it doesn't get better, it gets different. I'm like, what? What do you mean it doesn't get better? It doesn't get better because you have moments where you're like happy as fuck and running around your house like, yay, woo, and having a good old time. And then you sit down and you hear a little song or a little thing that makes you think about someone. And then it's all over. And, so that's really sorry. I didn't think it would just thinking about them, just thinking about them sometimes gets me kind of going. Now my eye just burns. There we go. But no, honestly, it doesn't get better. Honestly, it gets different. You hear these phrases, especially today, with this pandemic, and everybody's talking about a new normal, and the concept of new normal really only first occurred to me a few years ago. It was 2014, uh, around August, and my dad had gone into a situation where his only kidney, his last remaining kidney, but it was done. So to give a brief little history of the whole kidney thing, in 2000, my father would have been about 38 years old. So little retrospective thought here. 38, I'm 33, pretty close, I'm just like that far away from that age, and I'm really seriously taking this in consideration and taking it seriously, some health choice changes and trying to reverse what the inevitable could be before we get there. Um, but I don't want to go too far off on a tangent here. In 2000, he woke up one morning, extremely high blood pressure, physically ill, drove to the hospital with me in the car. Now I was probably maybe 13 or so. So 20 years ago, yeah, I was 13 years old. And so at 13, I'm thinking like, what's going on? I have no clue what's going on. I just know he's very sick, and I was really scared. And he took me with him in case I had to drive the car. Now, at 13, I had never driven a car before. And some of you out there be like, hey, man, I was 13 years old. I was driving my daddy's pickup truck up and down the road all the time. Like, congratulations, you know? And I'm sure you're asking your dad at 13, you're like, Daddy, can I drive this car? Can I drive your truck? I don't know why I'm doing a Southern accent. I'm making fun of my own Southern heritage. But that's just my go-to, like, a voice for people. Um, but no, I guess a lot of you probably maybe have had that experience where you were younger and got to drive around, and then you're like, I'm driving the hell out of this truck. Huh, yeah, Bobby, you sure are, son. But no, honestly, I'd never driven a car before. Never even been behind the passenger seat. I've never been behind the driver's wheel, like, going down the road. So I didn't know what to think about that. He's like, you might have to drive. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no clue. But that's how seriously ill he was. Now, looking back, I don't really know why he didn't call an ambulance, but it is what it is. Anyway, we get there, and I don't remember how high his blood pressure was, but I know somewhere in the 200 range or something. It was very, very dangerously high. And he was in the hospital for I don't know how long. And then that event happened over the course of however many months, and I don't remember the details or how long in between or at what points what thing happened, but I do remember the end result, and that was having the kidney removed because it was the blood pressure, the illness, the nausea, all that stuff stemmed from that kidney being just no good, and so they took it out. And that was in 2000. This is 2020. That was in 2000. I was in the 8th grade, and I remember that moment vividly, being at the hospital waiting for hours about the surgery because I was confused. I didn't know what to do. And so for the next, I want to say 9 years, things were different. Things were, new. He was okay, but yet he wasn't. And when it came time to use the bathroom, to go take a leak, he had to go quicker because he couldn't hold it as much. And then around, I think it was 2009, the remaining kidney didn't have sufficient blood flow or something like that, and they had to do a connector graft, something to his intestine to get a source of blood flow into the kidney. And so they did this little mesh thing or whatever. I don't know how they did it, but that was attached, and so he was good. And he's I think his heart had always been fairly weak, but then going through all this kidney stuff, it really kind of weakened his heart and made things a little more difficult, a little more challenging. But in that stage, he was doing okay, and so he recovered from that surgery in 2009 ish, and then like 5 or 6 years later, or maybe it was earlier than that. I don't know, but around in 2014, that last kidney, that's what kind of went. And what happened was he ended up having that graft, that connection between the intestine and the kidney. It kind of corroded into the intestine, and one night he got very faint and boom, hit the floor. Now I'm in the next room, not in this house, but I'm in the next room, and I'm like, what happened? And I poked my head in. I didn't see anything. I assumed he was in the bathroom. So I just sat back down, and I heard him calling my name, like, hey, come here. I'm like, what? And he's like laying on his bed face down, naked, because he had taken his clothes off at some point, and then he was just laying there. And he's like, look in the toilet. I'm like, I don't want to look in the toilet. And at that point, I thought maybe he was just sick. I don't know. And so he got himself dressed, came in, and then I did end up going in and looking. It was full of blood. And I don't want to be too graphic on this show. That's not really what I'm trying to do, but I'm trying to sell the point of what it was, with the severity of the situation. So essentially, when he went to the bathroom, he, bled out almost through his butthole. And well, I'm not trying to make light of it, but I'm trying to keep good spirits, because it is a sad story, and one that I feel like I need to tell. And I don't know why I'm going to tell everybody this story, but it's something that, I don't know, it makes me, I don't know. I don't know what it makes me, but it just, talking about it makes things different, makes things easier, I guess, it's just good to get it out. It's like a weight going. So yeah, he essentially bled out through his butt when he went to the restroom, because in his intestine, the blood was coming from the kidney out, and then that's what caused him to faint, the extreme loss of blood. And so he debated and deliberated, do I go to the hospital? Do I not go to the hospital? And so we got in a car. Eventually, he kind of, cooler heads prevailed or whatever. We didn't argue about it. I was like, look, if you're fainting and you need to go. But then I realized, okay, well, you got up off the floor and you got yourself dressed, and now you feel fine. But you need to, this is a serious thing, because after seeing what was in the toilet, I was like, you have to go. So we went. And that's when they said, he was still bleeding at that point, and it was all night long. I remember being in the hospital waiting room, the ER waiting room, until about 5:30 in the morning, and he was back in wherever he was. And I woke up to a nurse like, hey, you're Steven, right? I'm like, yeah. Well, your dad's in here. Like, come on. And that was like 5:30, 5:45 in the morning. And so I had slept all night in the waiting room. And then what I came to next was one of the most frightening things I've ever seen in my life. Not because it was like, but it was something that I remember. And but yeah, we're gonna go into part 3 of the video. Stay tuned.